All right, everyone, welcome back into another NBA props betting video. We are getting some pretty good early edges on underdogs, so we're going to start the video with that, and then we'll touch on kind of a game-by-game breakdown. Let's go ahead and start there. Okay, guys, so James Harden to get over his fantasy score right now on underdog is really one of the better edges that we are getting. He's at 43.5 for his fantasy score in underdog. The average sportsbook line has it closer to 48.7. Sure, the projection data doesn't like the over there. That's a little bit of a concern for sure, but the prize pitch line is at 45.5. So really the two key data points that we have coming in are telling us to bet the over, and so that underdog line ends up being a very, very good spot for us there. And then, guys, Devin Booker is a bet that's checking all the boxes for us here. Devin Booker to get over 41.75 for his fantasy score. Prize Picks has it at 43.5. The average sportsbook line has it at 46.6. And the projection data at 45.2. Okay, underdog is very wrong with that line. And then we also have... We'll star that one. We also have Cooper Flag as well for over his fantasy score, which I feel like is not as good of a bet because we do worry about his consistency. But, okay, guys, so Cooper Flag to get over his fantasy score is also one where we are seeing a pretty decent prop line difference, okay? Underdog has it at 31.95, Prize Picks at 33.5, and then the average sportsbook line at 34.5. So clearly the underdog line is a little bit too low. So we already have three very good bets. Okay, I think that makes for a good three slip bet. This next one is one where I wouldn't necessarily say you need to include it in there, but also I don't mind it. It's fine. Like, we could definitely include it if you guys like it. And then, yeah, it's going to be giddy, guys. So, again, a pretty decent prop line difference in comparison to Prize Picks and underdog. That's always good. But the average sportsbook line is what is off here. Or, well, it's probably off. But in comparison to the underdog line, we see that one of these are off, right? So, I like betting the over here, but this game is also kind of a game that I want to game stack in general. This is going to be a pretty high scoring game, or at least it's projected to be. There is a little bit of risk in this, so I do want to talk about one other bet here in this game for underdog, and that's going to be Nikola Vucevic to get over his fantasy score as well of 35.85. A very solid bet for him as well. Again, we're just getting too many good bets here. So, guys, really, we got a 5-slip bet here. And if, well, let's get George Kittle off of there, but... So like a simple bet slip here would be to do these four here, guys. And we could also toss in Nikola Vucevic for over his fantasy score as well. We end up with a pretty solid 5-slip bet there. So that's going to be my underdog bet of the day here. And now we're going to shift into more of a game-by-game breakdown. But I do want to start off with that game. So yeah, guys, let's start with this game. And I have this obviously pulled up here on the 9to5 Prize Picks Optimizer, the new tool that I have available at 9to5sports.com. I want to start out with the best bets that we are getting in this game. So the bets are checking all the boxes based off of the projection data that we have coming in. And let's start with Kevin Huerter. Okay, so I like his over fantasy score, but this is very much going to be predicated on an injury update here. So for the Bulls, Kobe White is currently questionable. If Kobe White were to end up playing, which he could, I mean, it seems like a toss-up, then this bet ends up being horrible. Okay, the Josh Giddey bet is not as good for his over. That is an issue that we have. But other than that, this ends up being a pretty decent bet. We see the splits, guys. He has been crushing it lately. This is a very high-scoring game as well. 244 basically, and a close game as well. And so I do think we have a good opportunity to do some game stacks in this game. So I'm really looking for some of these over bets that we can get to here in this game. And so I like Huerter for over his fantasy score. Again, that's more of a bet on Kobe White ended up sitting. If he plays, that's not nearly going to be as good of a bet. Just calling that out. And then that's kind of it for like the bets that I really like. Isaac Okoro would be some that should benefit if Kobe White were to end up sitting, but also not necessarily the bet that I think we need to get to. So let's go ahead and take a peek at someone like Lauri Markkanen. I like the bets that we're getting for Lauri Markkanen, but I do like his over fantasy score as well. Again, if we're maybe looking to stack this game, which again, I don't mind, we have some good bets on underdog. I think this could end up being a good bet for us on Prize Picks here. Lauri Markkanen to get over his fantasy score. I would see he's been a little bit hit or miss. Don't get me wrong there, but again, given the high game total, I'm happy to chase that bet, especially in a game stack. And then another player who has seen his minutes kind of tick up a little bit recently has been Isaiah Collier. Now, since I've started the video or doing my research, they have bumped some of his prop bets, but I do like him to get over his points here of 8.5. This bet has about a 52% likelihood per Vegas, so really not a terrible bet. We see the average projection, which is based off of his projected minutes, DVP adjusted. It's a good matchup. Everything kind of points to him being able to get the over. And if we look at his game log, it has been solid as well, especially when we look at his minutes. If he gets 27 minutes in this high scoring game, that ends up being a very solid bet for us. So again, another bet in that game where we could be running out a game stack. Now, are there any other ones that we like here? I don't want to mess with another Chicago Bulls guard just because we are a little bit worried about Kobe White playing. Keontae George, I feel like his lines are correct here as well. And so from there, although I really like this game stacking wise, any other bets would kind of feel like we're forcing it. Ace Bailey as well here, guys, projected for 25 minutes. We have seen him get a little bit more than that recently. Sure, if he ends up being more than that ends up being a pretty decent spot there as well. But again, everything other than that feels like we're forcing it again without that Kobe White news. And so that gives us like 5, I would say, pretty solid bets here, guys. So if we're looking for like a generated bet slip, we're not gaining an edge here on prize picks with this bet slip, worth calling out. But I do think it makes sense for a game stack there. So let's go ahead now and jump on into the next game. We'll go to the Clippers versus the Celtics. So both teams obviously have kind of their star players out. Tatum's not expected back anytime soon. And then Kawhi Leonard is still out. Now, I will say I don't necessarily see any great bets that we are getting here. John Collins is just not getting enough minutes for us to really want to get to any of his overs. I wish that was a decent bet. And then from there, there's really not that much there. Like Brook Lopez, the data is kind of liking him for his overs. We have him projected for 24 minutes right now. I don't know if I necessarily see that happening. Okay. He hasn't really been getting the minutes recently. If that's correct, sure. That ends up being a great bet. If we do the filtered call out bets here, guys, where we sort by best bets, the best are checking all the boxes. He is someone that is really popping up in there for us here as well. But I just don't think we need to get there. Same thing here with Peyton Pritchard, where DVP-wise, it's a very good matchup. He is projected to get some pretty high minutes. It wouldn't be shocking to see him have a good game. It's just not necessarily a bet that I feel like we need to get to. It's a big enough slate where I feel like we don't need to force any bets. So we're going to go ahead and just pass on over this game. We'll jump into the Hawks versus the Suns. As I mentioned, we already are getting a pretty good bet there for Devin Booker for over his fantasy score on another site, right, on Underdog. So we look at a bet like Royce O'Neal for over his points, rebounds, and assists here of 18.5. A very appealing bet, really. A decently high-scoring game, but, I mean, well, not really, but 230, not crazy. But close game here. We like that. And on top of that there, guys, for the Suns, Jalen Green is out, Grayson Allen is out. And so that does help out Royce O'Neal a decent amount there. And so I'm fine with that. If we want to get to that one there as well, it seems like a pretty solid bet overall. But then from there, let's just kind of scroll through these bets. So we got Jalen Johnson for under his rebounds here of 7. Not necessarily a bet that I feel like we need to go over our weighted target, although the Suns don't necessarily give up that many. A bet that I actually kind of am okay with here, Dyson Daniels, to get under his points. He's just not been shooting the basketball all that much, and he just hasn't been making that much. Now, Trae Young is out in this game still. And so you would expect Daniels to get going eventually, so maybe that's a bet that you don't necessarily like. Luke Kennard as well, who's projected to get 18 minutes. He's someone that I would have been more inclined to bet the over if we were being told to bet the over here, guys. So not necessarily a bet that I love. I kind of disagree with the data there. Mark Williams for under his points. We can see he's kind of been struggling there as well. I don't necessarily like the matchup here for him, so you could bet that one. Dylan Brooks is interesting here. He is shooting a bunch. And we got Grayson Allen and Jalen Green out in the spot. We're getting him shooting about the basketball about 14 times. I actually don't mind this, especially if we were looking at a game stack, but it kind of feels like we're choosing between Royce O'Neal and Dylan Brooks a little bit, but I don't mind that. I think that's a decent bet there. Alexander Walker for over his fantasy score is also kind of an interesting bet. About a 51.5% chance for the over to hit. If we're looking at a game stack, I don't mind it. He is someone that, with Trae Young off the court, has seen his usage, be up. He just needs to shoot the basketball better, okay? And he has been recently. And so if we want to chase that after a little bit of a cold stretch where he wasn't shooting the basketball well, I'm fine with that. So that ends up being another kind of decent game stack there. So we got Dylan Brooks, Royce O'Neal, and then Alexander Walker for over his fantasy score. And I think we can kind of just stop there in regards to breaking down this game. So we'll go ahead and jump on into the next game, which is going to be the Kings versus the Spurs here, guys. And this is one of the potentially bigger spots on the slate. Okay, so the reason why this could end up being a pretty good spot for us is Wemby is currently questionable. If he were to end up sitting, we would be gaining a lot of pretty good value here. And so let's start with some of those spots here. So like Devin Vassell would be someone that would definitely benefit if Wemby were to sit. Okay, and he also gets a very good matchup in a high-scoring game as well. A little bit of a blowout rest there, guys, 8.5-point spread or so. But Devin Vassell is someone that if he gets a little bit more run, we have him projected for 29 minutes. We look at the game log. It's a little bit sporadic. We see 35, 21, 33. So there's a good chance he does end up with more minutes. But look at his per 36 production with Wemby off the court, guys. Averages 30.3 fantasy points per 36, 21 points, 4.7 rebounds, 2.5 assists. On top of that, he gets a bump in his usage of about 10%. And so that would be very appealing. Again, if you want to place a bet with Wemby sitting, this would end up being a good spot for us to get to. On top of that, we haven't seen this too much thus far this year, but you got De'Aaron Fox going against his former team. If you guys like that narrative, you'd probably like this bet a little bit more. This seems like more of a traditional sportsbook bet, I will say, but I kind of like the idea of chasing De'Aaron Fox for over his points, rebounds, and assists here of 34. Okay, again, probably more of a better traditional sportsbook bet, but if Wemby were to sit, we would see De'Aaron Fox probably get going, and he has been playing a lot of minutes, but I think he would just end up having a very good game for us. So I like the idea of pairing Vessel and Fox up together for a little bit of a game set there, as I mentioned. Now, if Wemby ends up playing, then this bet, Keldon Johnson, which is one of the better prop bets that we were getting for under his fantasy score, ends up being a better bet. Okay, we have him projected for 21 minutes right now, which, as we can see, he basically averages that. The issue is that it's 27 some games, 24, 19. It is a little bit spread out there, so it's whether or not he gets like that extra rotation. It is a highest scoring game. We don't like that, but it is a tougher matchup for him. And if Wemby sits, this ends up being a better bet. If he plays, If Wemby plays, that ends up being a good bet. If Wemby plays, that is a good bet. If Wemby sits, I would actually like the over there for Keldon Johnson because he could end up getting a little bit more run. You would expect him to get a little bit more run there. So very much a game stack slip there that we could run out depending on whether or not Wemby plays. And on top of that, we have this bet here with Russell Westbrook for under his fantasy score, which if we look at the underdog line, they have it at 36. Okay, so that's off by 1.5 between the two sites already. And then we look at all the other data points that we have coming in. We do see that this prize picks line is too high. So if Wemby plays, we have a little bit of a stack here. We've got Westbrook under his fantasy score, and then I think we could also run out the Keldon Johnson under his fantasy score as well. Okay, I think those two bets, they don't necessarily correlate, but again, it just depends on Wemby. So we have two ways to attack it. I don't mind attacking it either way. We're just trying to gain an advantage on prize picks or any other site by making two different bet slips based off of Wemby playing or sitting, and then we have a decent edge there. Now, neither of those are absolutes, obviously, but I'm just calling out some decent spots that we have there. So let's go ahead and jump into another game. We got the Magic versus the Rockets, guys. Really not much there. These bets for Goga are going to get bumped. But let's go ahead and take a peek at some of these other ones that we're getting. So Desmond Bane for under his points. He has been someone that has kind of picked it up a little bit recently, but a tough matchup for him. Low scoring game and also an 8-point spread. I kind of agreed that we could be looking at Desmond Bane to probably get his under points of 19.5. I won't talk you out of that if you guys like that bet. We also have Franz Wagner for over his fantasy score, 39.5. Not a terrible bet, but again, in this low scoring game, I don't think I necessarily want to be targeting any of those bets for the most part. Now, Reed Shepherd for over his fantasy score, I think is a bet that people are going to want to get to. About a 51% chance for this bet to hit. Gets a solid matchup. The issue, again, low scoring game, but if it ends up being a blowout, I do think that ends up benefiting him. We can see he has kind of been consistently getting this over recently. We have him projected for 23 minutes, and as we can see, he has gotten a little bit more run recently, and if he ends up getting that, this ends up being a pretty decent spot for us there as well. So I don't mind it. And worth calling out in this game, guys, Tari Eason is out, and so that is why I think we're going to see Reed Shepherd get that a little bit additional run from what we have seen him get in some other games. So I think we should feel pretty secure about him being able to get 23 minutes. And that's really the bet there. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the Nets versus the Wizards now. For this game, I don't necessarily love chasing anything for either team. Okay, Cam Thomas is styled here for the Nets. Koulibaly is currently questionable for the Wizards, and I do think that changes enough in regards to this slate. If Koulibaly, again, he's questionable. We know that. Okay, so if he ends up playing, that really kind of hurts any of the other bets that we can get to in this game. So I just think for now it's a stay away. Maybe we get a little bit more clarity. But for now, we're just going to skip over that game. And then we also have, I would say, a pretty good spot here in the Trailblazers versus the Mavericks. Oops, got to click apply. I like Drew Holiday to get over his fantasy score of 34.5. This game is a decently high-scoring game, projected to be a close game as well. Drew Holiday at 34.5. We see the underdog line at about 35.3, so a little bit higher there. Look at the splits. Ben pretty consistently getting to around this line. And so it's not a bad matchup there against Denver. I think that's a matchup that we could target. And so I think that ends up being a pretty decent spot. And then I do like the idea of getting to PJ Washington as well in this game. He is someone that projected for 31 minutes. He's going to be back in this game, going to be healthy, good to go. And we see over the last couple of games, guys, 5 and 22 minutes, 28 minutes. Like, we do need those minutes, those 31 minutes to be there for him. And if he does end up getting that, then he should be able to get the over. So again, probably more of a game stack bet here, but overall, I think that makes sense. So we could do Drew and PJ Washington for overs, and we feel pretty good about that. And then the last game that we're covering here, guys, Golden State versus the Pelicans. So for Golden State, Jonathan Kuminga is out, which actually helps out Draymond Green a decent amount, and I think that's why we're not getting any bets for him just yet. So we'll see kind of what ends up happening there. And basically the lines that we're getting here for the Warriors all seem to be pretty correct. I mean, Moody's projected to get 21 minutes. He actually could end up getting a little bit more than that. And if he does, maybe he ends up doing pretty well points and assist wise, but overall it just feels like we'd be forcing that bet, so I don't necessarily want to get there. And then for the Pelicans, guys, Zion is currently questionable, and so if he ends up playing, that does kind of shift some of the bets that we want to be on. Fears would not be as good of an option here, but that would help to keep the game closer. It is a 10.5 point spread right now, and that's been the biggest difference for the Pelicans, is whether or not these games can stay close. And so that becomes like the variable there. And so I just don't think we want to mess with really this game at all. Zion, if he plays, like, sure, his lines might be a little bit too low, but again, I just don't think we want to mess with that right now. So if we just look at kind of the best bets that we are currently getting now for trying to make a bet slip here, if we run a 6 slip bet, guys, this one has a negative 3.7 edge, but again, I don't mind it because we are getting some game stacks here, so not terrible. And that slip will end up being the 9 to 5 bet of the day here for today, guys. So that does it for the NBA coverage. Appreciate you guys being here. Be on the lookout for the Sunday Night Football showdown breakdown prop video for you guys as well. That'll do it, guys. Thanks for watching. Good luck, and as always, let's keep cashing. But if you guys want access to any of the tools that you saw throughout this video, make sure to head on over to 9to5sports.com. Get access to those tools for a low monthly cost of $10 a month. Appreciate you guys being here. Good luck, and as always, let's keep cashing.